So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day for the Salesforce Admins webinar, Make Your Apps Smarter with Einstein. I'm excited today to be joined by two amazing, intelligent Einstein people. Of course, my name is Mike Gerhold, Director of Admin Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Gerhold. Voices you will hear today. Marco, VP Product Management Einstein. He has a really cool Twitter handle at AMRCN_werewolf. Hopefully we find out what the werewolf means. And Sarah Asher, Director of Product Management for Einstein at Salesforce as well. Of course, it wouldn't be a Salesforce Admins webinar without our famous forward-looking statements. So just a reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and please make all of your purchasing decisions based on current features and functionality. Of course, we're very social on the admin team, and we hope that you are very social with us. So if you're on Twitter, follow us at Salesforce Admins, no I, and connect with other awesome admins using the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, you can find us at Salesforce Admins. And of course, YouTube reminds me that's also where this webinar will be recorded and posted. So this webinar is being recorded. If you want to go back and listen to that amazing intro or the forward-looking statement slide, which I do, I have on loop all the time. You can watch at bit.ly/buildwitheinstein. It's very cool. Now, I know you're going to have questions. I have questions like, why is Marco's Twitter handle include werewolf? You can ask those questions in the admin webinar group on the Trailblazer community. If you're already logged into the Trailblazer community, just look for Salesforce Admins webinars. If not, just type in bit.ly/admin webinar group. You don't have to wait to the end to ask your question, so feel free to ask it as it comes to mind. Do, however, take a second to scroll through and see what other questions have been asked, because often there are duplicate questions. We do our best to make sure that everyone gets an answer to their question. And of course, stick around for the end for the live Q&A, when we'll find out perhaps why Marco has @werewolf in his Twitter handle. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our incredibly smart speakers, Marco, with today's agenda.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Marco Castellano. I'm VP Product of Einstein. And today, we're going to give you a look at some new capabilities that are coming along the pike with Einstein. And so first, we're going to take a look at Einstein at large and just give a quick look at that for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. And then we're going to demo to you something that is hot off the presses, Einstein Prediction Builder. And Sarah will be doing that, and she'll also be talking about what that means for all of you, and then we'll open it up to questions. But first, an overview of Einstein. Einstein is artificial intelligence for CRM, specifically. And actually, with what we're going to show today, we can broaden that definition to artificial intelligence for the Salesforce platform. It is built into Salesforce and it's intended to be used with and in Salesforce. But Einstein is not a general purpose AI toolkit. So you would not build a self-driving car with Einstein. That's not what it's for. It is, however, for making all of your applications in Salesforce more intelligent. And intelligence is not that easy to do, or at least traditionally it hasn't been that easy to do, because up to this point, in order to add artificial intelligence to any application, you generally needed to have some pretty significant training in data science. There's a lot of things that you need to do just to prepare your data for machine learning. And so here we will kind of refer, I think, to artificial intelligence and machine learning synonymously. But that's effectively what we mean when we say Einstein. Einstein learns from your history of data, and it applies those patterns forward to make predictions that can benefit you and your users. But as I mentioned, in the past, if you wanted to make this happen, you would have had to have had or to be a data scientist to prepare the data, to select an algorithm, to know which algorithm to use for which use case, and then to integrate that back into your application. But because this is Salesforce, we're able to automate the vast majority of that and provide you with a much easier user experience, one that is accessible to Salesforce admins who don't necessarily have data science training. Now, for those of you who have been paying attention over the last year, Einstein was released in September of 2016. And between then and now, we have added 20 different Einstein applications in the various clouds of Salesforce. And this is a list of all of them that are public and publicly available as of right now. But up to this point, Einstein has been primarily exposed through these applications, which have what we call fixed outcomes. So for example, lead scoring scores your leads, but those leads have to be the standard lead object in Salesforce. If you have a custom lead object or a prospect object or something like that, you're out of luck with regard to lead scoring, because that's a pre-built app with a pre-built outcome that applies to that standard object. The fact is that roughly 80% of the data that's in Salesforce is custom. So those are custom objects and custom fields that all of you have added to your own Salesforce instances. And so our customers have been asking us to provide a more customizable solution with Einstein and allow them to add intelligence to their own apps and to those that they've installed via third parties, ISVs, as we call them, or App Exchange partners. And so to that end, we are introducing My Einstein. My Einstein is exposing the Einstein platform to you, the user, so that you can indeed build these custom predictions. Now, My Einstein comes in 4 parts right now. We're only going to be focusing on one of those today. Stay tuned for possible future webinars where we may cover some of the others. But Einstein Prediction Builder is a big piece of that, and that is what we will be showing today. So I'll not belabor that point, and I'll have Sarah show that in just a moment. But My Einstein also includes Einstein Vision and language services, and that is using deep learning techniques to extract information from unstructured data like images and like free text. And you can use that to extract that information and structure it or run workflow off of it. There's also Einstein Discovery, which is built into Einstein Analytics, which is formerly known as Wave. And Einstein Discovery is really using artificial intelligence to dig into your data and discover the root cause of certain things, and then prompt you to run your business intelligence on those things. So why are my customers churning? Why would my customers be buying? And then you can build dashboards that allow you to monitor those factors and make sure that they're going the right way. And finally, also hot off the presses, Einstein Bots is a chatbot builder that will allow you to build conversational interfaces right inside of Salesforce and inside of your communities and those things that you expose to your customers. But today, we will be focusing on Einstein Prediction Builder. And Einstein Prediction Builder makes it very easy to add this custom intelligence to your application. And rather than me standing here blabbing about it any longer, I will instead pass it over to the Director of Product Management for Einstein Builder, Sarah Asher, who's going to give you a look at Einstein Prediction Builder.
Great. Thank you, Marco. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here talking with you guys. And again, I'm going to give a quick demo of what Prediction Builder is and how it works. So first of all, I'd like to go through a use case. I am a bank. Well, at least I'm pretending to be a bank, or I work at a bank. And our bank has a small issue. And the issue is that occasionally we have customers who leave, and we don't necessarily know which customers are unhappy and which ones are most likely to leave. And as someone who has a lot of customers on my plate, I don't necessarily know which ones are the ones I should be talking to and trying to convince to stay, because I don't know which ones are unhappy and which ones are happy. So the question is, for me, how can I figure out which customers are likely to attrit, which ones are unhappy? Now, this is something that we have a lot of data on each individual contact here. If you click into Edward's demos here, you can see we have his title and how much money they spent and transactions and all sorts of stuff. But I don't know how to take that information and determine whether whether Mr. Samos is likely to leave or not. So that is a perfect use case for something like Einstein Prediction Builder. So at this point, I would talk to my admin and say, help, how can I help solve this problem? And so as an admin, I'm going to try using Setup Builder to solve this problem. So let me, Prediction Builder, what did I say?
Setup Builder.
Setup Builder. I'm going to go into Setup, and that'll solve everything. No, Prediction Builder. So let me go into this tile and get started. So the basic idea of Prediction Builder in general is that we would like admins to be able to put in their own predictions into our system without necessarily needing to know a whole heck of a lot of data science. What they need to understand is basically their data, and hopefully that you do have a good concept of what's in your system. So as an admin, I can go into the setup pages and create a new prediction. So I'm just going to label this prediction. I want to know what is the likelihood that someone's going to leave or not. So I'm just going to call this likelihood of attrition. And please don't make fun of my typing. There we go. Okay. So in order to do this particular prediction, the object is the contact object because it's the context that we're interested in whether they're planning on leaving or not. So I'm just going to select contact and keep moving forward. The next thing is I need to select a field that I'm going to predict. So this requires a little work before you get to this page. In order for Einstein to predict whether a customer is likely to attrit or not, you have to give us a certain amount of information, which is which customers are you saying these are safe, these have not attritted, and which customers are the ones that have left, and then finally, which are the ones that you want to get the score for. And so that gets defined in this version of Builder in a formula field. And I've already created that, and so I'm just going to select it right now, which is the attritted field. Okay, so now I know what I want to predict. I want to predict attrition. However, now you have to tell Einstein what fields you want to use for this prediction. What are the important features that are likely to be used? So one thing to note about Prediction Builder is that you can hand us everything. We'll try figuring out what's important just by the list that you hand us. However, if there is stuff you do not want us to use for various reasons, you can tell us now. For example, you may say, please don't use the data.com key or something else, or whatever fields. And when this is particularly useful is, first of all, if you know your data is super dirty on a particular field, maybe you're like, no, Einstein, don't use that. I know it's garbage. But a more important use case would be something like if you're doing churn, or not churn, I'm sorry, if you're trying to do like a credit scoring, you don't want to use someone's information like their gender. You don't want to introduce biases. So if you've got a gender field, you could remove it. Otherwise, we will take all the fields that you've selected and we will do our best to use that in the model, or at least attempt to figure out if it's needed in the model or not. Okay, so anyways, I've selected my fields. I go on to the next page. In this version, we just save back straight to a custom field. So you will need to create a numeric custom field. And I created one just earlier called risk of attrition. And that's it. That's the information that you hand over. Basically, you have created a configuration. You can take a look at it, see if you agree. Otherwise, you can go back and edit and hit finish. What has happened now at this point is all that information that you have just given us, we take that and we put it into the Einstein platform and we create a model for you that will create these predictions for you. So now, going back to Edward, what I'm going to do is quickly, whoops, wrong spot. There we go. I'm going to pull out a lightning component. So one thing to note is, as you recall, that we save the predictions, which is a score between 1 and 100, back to a custom field. What that means is if you're in classic mode or you're in lightning mode, you have access to that underlying data. In this case, we've created a lightning component. If you don't have lightning, you could still just use the custom field just like any other custom field. Where is my component? There we are. Okay, so now I'm back as the person with way too many clients to figure out which ones are likely to attrit and which ones aren't. And I'm taking a look at the record. And now you'll notice this new section that's been added, which is the Einstein section. And there's now a likelihood of attrition with a score. And so this one, the score is 6%. They're 6% likely to attrit. And what that means is chances are this person is actually pretty happy, which is great. And so this means that this is someone that I don't necessarily have to spend time on right now. They're smooth sailing. I can spend my time on people who have more issues. However, the way that the Einstein Prediction Builder works is that as records get modified, we rescore. So in this particular case, if we find out that they get another external account, so we will just call this, what's another bank?
Nations Bank.
Nations Bank, that sounds good. I was just going to call it Sarah's Bank because I want my own bank. Nation Bank. Should be Nations, but that's okay. Whoops, sorry about that. Let me refresh real quick. So what will happen is that the Einstein Prediction Builder is going to pick up that change and say, hey, wait a minute. Now they have two external accounts. That was something that was, the more external accounts you have, the more likely you are to attrit. We better raise the score, and we will tell you now that there's a 26% likelihood of attrition. And for us, that's enough that we should get a warning saying, hey, this customer is at risk. We should spend some time with this customer. So one thing that I didn't talk about yet is this area right over here, which are the top predictive factors. So in addition to just giving us a score, we give you a reason why we gave you that score. So here, the top reason we have that likelihood of attrition being 26% is that the external accounts is 2, that the number of external accounts is rising. That means they're more likely to move to another bank. Okay, so a couple of other notes on this. Note number 1 is that because this is just being pushed back to custom fields, this can also be used in Process Builder. So on the behind the scenes, as an admin, I also created a Process Builder flow that says, hey, if the likelihood of attrition becomes too high, create a task, create a task. And so that automatically gets added down here as well. High activity, high value customer at risk of churn. And one last note related to this, and so this can also be, what's the word? A daisy chained with using Einstein.ai, the Einstein language services. So for example, another field that we've added here is the sentiment of the last note, which is currently positive. And if you add a new note and you find out and say that problem with loan, oops, not load, loan, unhappy with new loan program, or something like that. What can actually happen at this point is you can use the Einstein Languages API to give us more information, which is to figure out the sentiment of the note that comes in. And so the sentiment now of the last note is now negative. And the reason it's negative is because they said, we're unhappy for loans. And all of a sudden, that sentiment of the last note is also used as a feature in doing our prediction. And so now you'll notice that the prediction up to 66%. Like, this is someone we really need to spend a time with right now. So there you go. So that's a good way to get information about, to add intelligence into your system using Einstein Prediction Builder. So that's it for the demo. Okay, so let's talk about what this means for admins. So one note is right now, this is a pilot program, and we're in pilot. But I want to give some information on how you guys would be potentially setting up your systems to to use Einstein Prediction Builder once Einstein Prediction Builder is GA and available for everyone. So one important thing to note is basically, what does Einstein do? It basically takes your data, it looks for patterns in your data to make these predictions. What that means is your predictions are only really going to be as good as the data that you give it, and by extension, only as good as the data processes, or sorry, the business processes that fill that data. So I want to go through a couple of normal pitfalls, and here are some data issues that you could potentially consider. First one is missing data. Just going back to the use case we just did, if we didn't actually have any fields filled out, all we would have is a contact and no other information. And Einstein isn't going to be able to do anything with that. And I know it's common sometimes, like if you put a lead into a system, you just put the lead in with a name and nothing else. If there's nothing else in the system, there's nothing we can do with that information. The second one is inconsistent and dirty data. So what this means is if 2 or 3 people are all using the same field in different ways, it means that the data isn't very clean for us to be able to find patterns, because the patterns are being messed up by the fact that everyone has their own different pattern. So it would be good to have everyone sort of have a consistent way of using the fields that you've got on your data or on your records. The third one, data not available at the right time. So this one is, this one sort of interesting. What does that mean? In general, think about for just a second a lead converts into an opportunity, and you put the lead information in there, and then it's basically you only enter the lead in the system right before you're going to convert. So you put the lead in, and then you put in all the data of all this interesting information about the lead, and you hit convert, and you're done. That's great, but that data isn't available early enough for us to determine whether a lead is going to convert or not, because you're only giving us the data when it's already about to convert. So you need to make sure that the data system is filled, that you fill data, that you give us the information on the record early, not just when the event is about to occur. Okay, and then finally, no signal in the noise. So if I were to try to predict your favorite color by your social security number, I would really do a very bad job. The only way that we would be able to predict things is if you give us interesting information on the data, which means that it may be bringing more fields into Salesforce, or again, going back to the above, making sure that potentially interesting fields are actually filled in. So those are some things to consider when you're setting up things for Einstein Prediction Builder. Okay, so what are the solutions to those problems? Part of the solutions are fairly standard, which is just like validation rules and triggers and process builder. You can make sure that the data is clean as it gets entered, or data has to be entered. But sometimes it will be updating business processes. So for example, going back to the salesperson who only enters the lead in just before it converts to opportunity, one of the problems with that particular use case is that you're not going to have any examples of negative leads. All your leads are going to be positive because the only times leads get entered in the system is if they're going to convert. So it makes it very difficult for Einstein or anyone else to figure out which leads are unlikely to convert because they're not actually in the system. So it may require changing business processes, convincing your salespeople to enter the leads in early, even if they're not going to convert, just so that we can collect information and figure out what's important and what's not important. Okay, so you have Einstein Prediction Builder. How do you use it in your company? And so there's some basic questions to sort of ask yourself as you go along this process. One thing about something like Prediction Builder is I tend to think of it as a hammer, and when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But what you should actually do is do it opposite. What are the pain points in your company that intelligence can be used to help? And so for an example, in this case, we had a customer attrition issue. That was the pain point. Then the next thing is to take that pain point and see, will a prediction actually help with it? And what sort of prediction? In this case, if we have the likelihood of attrition, then it's likely to help. Then that's the type of prediction, and that fits nicely into Prediction Builder. Third one is, how will this prediction be used? So in this case, we ended up actually adding the prediction to Process Builder so that people would get tasks. But there's no point in doing a prediction unless you're actually going to use the prediction within the rest of your company and within all of your business processes. So that should be sort of determined in advance how you're planning on using it. The fourth is what changes are needed to your system. So going back to like cleaning your data, are there certain fields that need to be added? What sort of changes are needed in order for the system to work? And then finally, how are you going to measure whether this was actually useful or not? How are you going to measure effectiveness? And in the case of the bank, in this case, they can just look at churn rates over time. Did their attrition rate go down? If it went down, chances are this model has been effective in helping to retain customers. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mike.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So, of course, there's a lot of ways to learn about Einstein. You can become an AI trailblazer with the Trail Mix, trailhead.einstein.com. That's very cool. I'm going to have to go through that later today. How admins can take advantage of Einstein. We've got tons of information on admin.salesforce.com. And you can even hear a podcast where we talk with some Einstein experts, what Einstein means for Salesforce admins. That, of course, is on your one-stop shop, admin.salesforce.com. So let's see. I know we have a wrap-up slide, and we'll get into some Q&A. So there's a ton of questions coming in to the webinar group. Marco and Sarah, you guys are going to be busy this afternoon. bit.ly/admin webinar group. Please take a moment. I am seeing some duplicate questions come in, so read through the feed a little bit. We will try and get through those. There's a survey, bit.ly/AWS survey-Einstein. And of course, the slides will be available at bit.ly/build with Einstein. So let's jump into that awesome part, which is the live Q&A. Marco, Sarah, I'll let you decide who wants to tackle this. I know you mentioned this was in pilot. Can we talk a little bit? Is there room in the pilot? What's involved with pilot?
So the pilot is actually relatively full right now, and we're processing pilot customers. I think it will be opened up again at some point. So the answer is not right this second, but keep it in mind because this will be available again soon.
Short and sweet. That's awesome. Let's talk about standard and custom fields. Can we use both of those to make predictions?
Yes, and that's one thing I should have said along the way. So you can use both standard and custom objects on the prediction, and both standard and custom fields within each object. There are some limitations on the standard objects you can do, but all the main ones that you think about, like lead and contact and account and whatever else, those are all supported within Builder.
Okay, very cool. I know our demo was in Lightning, and a lot of everything that people saw at Dreamforce this year was Lightning. Mm-hmm. There's a few customers that are still making that jump over to Lightning. So can we talk about, is Einstein Builder available with Classic?
Yes, so one thing to note is that the admin pages are done in Lightning. So your admin has to be Lightning enabled. That being said, the data, the predictions that we create are just stored as data. And so therefore they can be accessible using Classic.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome. Let's talk about a little bit, if you could elaborate more on external data.
Yes. So currently this is not running on external data, but that is in our roadmap. We are planning in the future to be able to support external data. But for now, it's just on one object. And it's just on standard Salesforce objects. Well, and custom. Standard and custom. Standard as in general, not standard as in officially standard.
And this is also very similar to the presentation you gave at Dreamforce.
That is very true, yes.
Yeah, awesome. What were some of the questions that you got at the end of that presentation that perhaps people missed out on?
Sure. One of the questions is there recommended record value? How much data do you need in order to use Prediction Builder? And that one is sort of interesting. It depends on the use case, and it depends on how wide your data is, how many fields how many features you've got. So it depends, but I would say at least, minimum would be a couple thousand. The more, the merrier. I mean, in general, for any sort of these predictions like this, the more data you have, the better your model is going to be.
And you showed a warning on the top of that page. I'm assuming, like everything in Salesforce, we can customize that.
Yeah, that was actually just a demo Lightning component, kind of straight up. That warning component is not going to be included out of the box because it'll be different for everybody's business.
So you could actually use a Lightning component and make it filtered and just have it render
well,
text.
And that's what that was. As a matter of fact, that's a good point. That component is using the new dynamic page layout capability. So it was triggering based on the attrition risk score, and that if it was over 20%, it would show that banner.
Oh, nice. We did something similar to that in the admin keynote, so I'm glad to see that's very cool. We talked about record value. We talked about using Einstein Builder in Classic, and we are at time. So Sarah and Marco, I know you guys are going to be busy in the admin webinar group, which is, if you're not already in there, bit.ly/admin webinar group. And so I take a moment and thank everyone for jumping on today's webinar and learning more about Einstein.
And one last thing, there is a trailhead, trailhead.einstein.com. Go check out our trailhead. You can try out Prediction Builder for yourself.
Even though it's still in pilot, in the Einstein Prediction Builder trailhead, it will provision you a little playground developer org that you can use to kick the tires. Thank you all.